A few years ago, I did some work editing other people's weddings at the end of my wedding season and began to notice that some of the weddings I was editing took me much longer for many reasons that were beyond my control. Most people I speak to don't love editing weddings, and maybe I'm one of the few, but I actually love editing more than I do shooting. Today I'm going to give you some solid tips and advice how you can shoot and edit faster, and maybe these tips will help you to enjoy the editing process a bit more. Setting up your camera for success. The very first thing you need to do with your cameras and audio equipment that's used to record is to set the correct date and time. Missing this essential step will make your editing experience tedious and annoying to get through. If you're shooting with more than one camera, being able to have all your clips in order sorted by time will make your life much easier when it comes to editing. I would also recommend changing the name of the clips that come from those cameras by having whatever text there is and then adding like an A for A cam or B for B cam afterwards to help yourself differentiate which camera it came from in case you have clips, like if they have the same name, like they'll have like the same numbers, and then when you go to add it to your computer, it might say, you don't want to duplicate this clip, but the two clips are actually two different clips. It's happened to me. I've almost deleted clips because of this issue. So speaking from experience here. Next thing I want to mention is organize. This is a big one, but organize your footage into folders. My best advice is after a wedding, dump all your footage into one folder, but then take the time to organize them into folders that say bride, groom, ceremony, portraits, reception, and audio. Keeping things organized before you ever edit will make the edit a lot easier to manage and work with when you begin to edit and start moving things around. Because we've changed the date and time on our cameras from before, everything should be in order, which means when you go to edit, regardless of the camera, everything will be in order, which will save you time moving stuff around. Doing this will also help you gauge where you're at in your edit and give yourself and your couple a better idea of how long it will take to finish. Like if you have all the correct times, then when you go pretty much to drag and drop all your clips into these folders, it will just be easier to track everything. And then when you begin editing, you can kind of tackle the wedding by parts of the day. And it just makes it a lot less daunting. That's the biggest thing, right? Most of the time when it comes to an edit, people don't know where to start. But if you organize it this way, then it's easier to kind of process and break down, and it's easier to find a starting point. Assuming you're using lav mics and plugging into a mixer or speaker for the ceremony and reception, you should essentially end up with 3 camera tracks and then like 2 to 3 audio tracks. And that goes into our next topic, syncing everything efficiently and quickly. So ideally, it would be nice to use wireless audio at a wedding, pretty much what I'm using right now. But the issue with that is you can get interference and it could ruin your footage. To prevent this from happening, you have to use a mic like the Tascam DR10L Pro, which records to the unit itself. I like these mics because of the lock on screw mechanism that prevents it from pulling out of the unit, and because it has all these audio features that make it a hit and record and walk away solution. These features are also something I value in my Zoom F3. And both these units are 32-bit float recorders, which make it very hard to like peak audio or for something to go wrong. If you'd like more information on these two, feel free to check out the video reviews I did for each one down below, or they might pop up on the screen, but I did like extensive reviews on both of these. But back to syncing. If you try to sync a few tracks on DaVinci Resolve and it gives you issues, then another solution is to use a software called Syncalia, which allows you to sync your audio automatically, essentially saving you hours of work. The way it works is you put your audio and video on separate tracks. So you put your video on separate, like each camera goes on a separate video track, and then each audio source goes on a separate audio track. Export that timeline to an XML, and then you put that XML through Syncalia, and then you export it from Syncalia, and then you put it back into DaVinci Resolve. And if everything works out, you should have all your audio tracks and all your video tracks pretty much lined up like by time and synced properly. So yeah, this has been super helpful. Syncing audio it's very time consuming. I mean, like if you're at a ceremony and you hit record on all your cameras and just have them going the whole time, then that's great. But if you have to like change a battery and then stop a camera, it can get pretty messy, man. You could have a lot of video tracks and a lot of audio tracks. And if you're shooting like Canon or a camera that overheats, that's another thing too. So Syncalia can really save you in that case. And sometimes DaVinci or other editing softwares, they don't sync audio properly all the time, so that's why I wanted to mention Syncalia. Next thing, shoot what you need. If you're a solo shooter, my best advice is to shoot what you need and leave everything else. Often I find people overshoot and have this I'll fix it in post mindset that really just makes their life harder in the long run, because that means you now have to spend more time going through more footage. From morning prep to the reception, I always have my standard shots that are essential, and any free time I try to get things outside of that to mix it up, but at the very least, get your essential shots so it's easy to map out the base of your edit. Some days you're gonna feel inspired and creative, other days you're not. So kind of have a shot list in your head to be like, okay, at the bare minimum, what do I need to make a complete wedding film, and start with that. So essential shots for your get ready would consist of detail shots, shots of the bride getting her hair and makeup finished, and maybe shots of the dress by itself if there's a good space for it. Don't overthink and give yourself more work than necessary. Certain shots will come to you, others won't. A wedding day plays out, it's a real event, it's not a photo shoot. You want to let it play out naturally and try to be creative and let things come to you as they happen. Other than those shots, I try to get some shots of the bride with her bridesmaids or interacting with her mother and father. These real moments. These to me are the shots that matter, and they won't take her out of her day, the wedding day. Try to think of you capturing it as it happened rather than you trying to get the most creative shots, because they will not always happen, and the bride will always remember how you made her feel on her wedding day. Capture the real moments and try to be creative with those as much as possible. And yeah, try to think of yourself as a fly on the wall and pay attention to how people are feeling and how they're expressing themselves. And those will be the shots that make a massive difference. When it comes to the ceremony, keep it simple, as this is usually where people go wrong. This is a part of the day where capturing the coverage is crucial. Use lav mics and a few cameras, and don't overcomplicate your process, or else it will be hell when you go to edit that footage. During the aisle walks and the groom seeing the bride for the first time, use a zoom lens to capture all of that. But for the actual ceremony, I would recommend setting up 2 to 3 cameras for specific angles and calling it a day. If you have a 4th camera to roam around with and get artistic shots, that's cool. But this part of the day is the hardest to edit, so having 3 cameras you can switch back and forth between will make your life a lot easier. In the future, I'm gonna be making more complete videos on how to shoot a ceremony, how to shoot a reception with a lot more detail, but I just wanted to give you guys a general idea how you should cover your bases with everything I'm saying. Anyway, moving on. With the reception, I would do the same thing and have a designated safe camera for the first dance, preferably a 35mm you can put off to the side. It's wide enough that they won't go out of frame, but still a nice look that doesn't look like a security camera just thrown into a corner off in the middle, like a corner of the room. Lastly, I would use a 24-105 on foot to get those super dynamic shots that you can mix in with your edit. When it comes to speeches, I would just set up 2 cameras, an 85 on the toast giver. I like to do an 85 on the person doing the toast, and then maybe a 100mm on, or some sort of telephoto lens on the bride and groom reacting. I like to crisscross them rather than just shoot them dead on. I find it just kind of adds a little pizzazz and gives you a little bit more of a dynamic image that you won't see in every film that you watch online, and just kind of gives it, if you utilize it a certain way, you can kind of get some cool shots with it. So next thing I want to talk about is make your packages feature a documentary film. I know this is gonna sound crazy to some people, but let me share my perspective. Now this one might be controversial, but most of my packages include a longer edit, and although it's great for the client, it's also great for my process. I usually start a wedding by laying out all the footage from, say, the get ready, and culling all the good footage and doing that for the rest of the day. I'll edit the entire ceremony, reception, and all the other key moments in chronological order. After that video is put together, color graded, and sound is added, I will duplicate the timeline and use this as a starting point for my highlight film. it's much easier to take footage away than it is to add footage. With that being said, because you spend hours doing that longer documentary edit, you will have a better understanding of the footage that you have, and you can just slowly take away those nice to have, but they don't need to be there shots and create the short film with all the essential shots. When I'm making a highlight film, it may take me 8 hours to put that, it'll take me like 10 hours to put that doc edit together. It will only take me like 3 hours to put a short film together. And that's me if I'm not trying. But if I'm really trying, I could say like 6 hours and I'm making a really good film. But it's just like having that doc edit and just having that laid out first, it just forces me to go through the whole wedding day and do, you know, break the day down by sections. And then afterwards, once you have that whole thing laid out, so you have like a 10-minute film, and then you break that down to like a really strong 7-minute film and you're good. Okay, so next thing I want to say, kind of going in order, is make a teaser film. By this point, you have an extensive idea of what footage and narratives are available in your films, that you can make a super creative teaser that you can drag in a few different directions. I usually do a teaser that's a bit more abstract and random for the couple to surprise them and get them hype. This can be a simple 30 seconds of a cool shot you took mixed in with some sound design and a more atmospheric song. With the trailer, you can feature a good audio section of the wedding, short film, and add some solid B-roll showing off your best shots and key moments of the day. This is how I break down my editing in a way where it gives me some direction and makes the whole process feel less daunting and overwhelming and a bit more clear. I find this has worked for me, and I feel like most of the time I get to like December and I don't find that I have much of a backlog. To give you an idea, I'll probably average about 15 to 20 weddings a year. There are people who do way more than me, but I get to the end of I can actually have a Christmas like with my family. It's just, I don't know, I just find this way has been a way that's easy and manageable. So the last thing I want to talk about is delivering in an efficient way. Back in the day when I first started out, I used to send my weddings on a hard drive and package in a way that consumed a lot of my time. If you're doing luxury weddings and focusing on a smaller demographic, then I think this is a great way to deliver to clients. It's personal and, you know, really gives a high-end feel. It's almost like if you got an iPhone or a MacBook, you know, unboxing that stuff is part of the experience. Even high-end clothing brands, it's the same idea. But if you're like me in the mid-tier market, then online delivery might be a better option. When it comes to price, quality, and features, I found EasyFlix to be the best bang for your buck situation. EasyFlix is a platform that allows you to upload videos and even photos to a little portfolio page for your client where you can customize it and add a background and all that fun stuff. I recommend this over just sending it via email or Dropbox. After everything is done, this is the packaging to what you're sending to your client. Sometimes the unboxing part is part of the experience, and if I'm spending thousands for something, how it reaches me is just as important. To me, this is the bare minimum wedding filmmakers should be doing to make sure a client has their wedding film sent in a way where it's easy to send to relatives and close family members. This will also look good on you from extended family members, as they will see how you present your work. If you'd like to find out more about EasyFlix, watch my full review. I will drop it probably a few videos after this. Learn keyboard shortcuts. When it comes to editing, DaVinci Resolve has a lot of tools that you can use to speed up your editing workflow, but honestly, I use literally none of them because I find they're all too specific and only do like one thing very well. Like there's the speed editor, I owned that, and then I just ended up getting rid of it because I just didn't find it was very useful, and it was only good for like the editing page or the media page, which I never use, and a lot of people don't. So it's just like, for what they are, I mean, if you can get a copy of DaVinci Resolve with it, I think it's kind of worth it, but it's just not something I'm gonna use. The way I see it, if you have to take your hands off your keyboard or mouse, then it's time wasted. Ideally, you want to keep your left hand on the left side of your keyboard and your right hand on your mouse at all times. I'm going to make a super in-depth video on what keyboard shortcuts you should have, and also the mouse and keyboard I recommend to edit efficiently and fast. You want a mouse that has other buttons that you can program, and when it comes to keyboards, whatever you're comfortable with is fine, but I think something with wrist support is great. Just whatever you do, stop editing with your Apple Magic Mouse. I promise there's better options. A lot of people swear by the MX Master 3. I actually made a video on it that you can watch. It's old, but in this case, I think it would be valuable. I'm not crazy about that mouse, but a lot of people are. I have long fingers, so I find like my fingers just kind of hang off of it. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And moving it around, I just don't like the way it feels. For the most part, I edit with Logitech keyboard and a Logitech mouse as well. But I will make a more extensive video on this, so just wait for that. So having systems in place will improve your speed and efficiency when it comes to editing weddings. And this is a way I've been operating that has kept me with no backlog at the end of the year. I hope this helps you out, and if you have any specific questions you'd like to see as a video, feel free to reach out. This is Damien. Take care, guys.